Long ago, beside the banks of the River Tiber, in the heart of the Italian peninsula, a small settlement of farmers and shepherds began to dream of greatness. Legend said that two brothers, Romulus and Remus, were raised by a she-wolf, bound by blood and destiny. When Romulus killed his brother in a moment of rage, he founded a city that would bear his name, Rome. No one then could have imagined that from that single act of violence would rise one of the greatest civilizations the world would ever know, a force that would shape laws, empires, and history itself. Rome was born in conflict and survived by ambition. In its early years, it was ruled by kings, proud men who wore crowns of laurel and commanded loyalty through fear. But the Romans, proud and restless, grew weary of monarchy. Around 509 BCE, they rose against their last king, Tarquin the Proud, and swore that never again would one man rule them all. Thus began the Roman Republic, a system of shared power. Of senators and consuls, where the people's voice, though often faint, could still echo through marble halls. Freedom had been won, but it was fragile, and power, even shared, remained a dangerous temptation. The Republic was hungry not for bread, but for dominion. It conquered the neighboring Latin tribes, defeated the Etruscans to the north, and subdued the Samnites to the south. Every victory brought wealth and pride, but also new enemies. The Roman legions, disciplined, relentless, and ruthless, became instruments of destiny. What began as defense soon became conquest. As Rome's influence spread across the Italian peninsula, the Senate began to believe that the gods themselves had chosen them to rule. The dream of a Roman world had begun. Then came the great test, the Punic Wars against Carthage, a mighty city across the sea in North Africa. Carthage commanded wealth, ships, and trade, while Rome commanded iron, discipline, and resolve. For over a century, the two powers clashed in a struggle for supremacy. The great general Hannibal crossed the Alps with his war elephants, striking fear into Roman hearts, yet even his brilliance could not break Rome's will. When the smoke finally cleared, Carthage was reduced to ashes, its people enslaved, its lands salted so that nothing would ever grow again. Rome emerged not just victorious, but unstoppable. But victory came with a price. The spoils of war made the rich richer and the poor poorer. Great estates swallowed the countryside, worked by slaves captured in foreign lands. The farmers who once formed the backbone of Rome found themselves displaced, their voices drowned in the Senate's golden chambers. Corruption festered like an unseen wound. Rome had conquered the world, but it was beginning to lose its soul. Among the shadows of politics rose men of ambition, Marius, Sulla, and Pompey, generals who turned armies into instruments of personal power. The Republic trembled as loyalty to the state gave way to loyalty to men. Civil wars erupted, streets ran red with Roman blood, and the ideals of liberty faded beneath the clash of swords. The Republic was dying, not from enemies abroad, but from its own hunger for power. Then came a man who would change everything, Gaius Julius Caesar. Brilliant, daring, and utterly relentless, Caesar was more than a general, he was a force of nature. From the forests of Gaul to the shores of Britain, his conquests expanded Rome's borders farther than ever before. His soldiers adored him, his enemies feared him. When the Senate ordered him to disband his army and return home, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, uttering the fateful words, "The die is cast." That single step plunged Rome into another civil war, one that would end the Republic forever. The war was swift and merciless. Pompey fled, the Senate crumbled, and Caesar emerged as the dictator of Rome. For a brief moment, peace returned, but it was the peace of control, not liberty. Caesar dreamed of reforming Rome, of giving land to the poor, rights to the provinces, and stability to chaos. But ambition is a dangerous flame, and those who lit it could not bear to see it burn too bright. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, Caesar was struck down in the Senate by men he once called friends, Brutus, Cassius, and others, each stabbing him in the name of the Republic. But as Caesar fell, so too did the Republic itself. Out of the chaos rose another, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, later known as Augustus. He was patient where Caesar was bold, cunning where others were reckless. Through diplomacy and war, he defeated his rivals Antony and Cleopatra among them and brought peace to a broken nation. In 27 BCE, The Senate bestowed upon him the title of Princeps, first citizen, and thus began the Roman Empire. The Republic was gone, but Rome was reborn not as a democracy, but as a divine monarchy cloaked in republican words. As the sun rose over marble temples and golden domes, Rome stood unmatched. From the misty hills of Britain to the sands of Egypt, the eagle of Rome cast its shadow over 3 continents. Roads, aqueducts, and cities carried the name of its glory. But beneath the triumph and splendor lay whispers that power won by the sword must one day fall to it. The empire was born in blood, and blood would one day reclaim it. But for now, Rome stood eternal, the center of the world, the light of civilization, and the promise of immortality. When Augustus took the throne, Rome exhaled after a century of chaos. He wrapped power in ceremony and peace in illusion. Calling himself the first citizen, he ruled as emperor in all but name. Under his steady hand, roads stretched across continents, cities bloomed, and trade flowed like blood through Rome's veins. The legions stood guard on distant frontiers, symbols of both protection and power. The world seemed at peace, and Rome entered what poets would call the Golden Age, an age of marble, poetry, and empire. Yet, even then, beneath the polished marble, the heart of Rome still beat with ambition and fear. Rome's hunger for land never faded. Under emperors like Tiberius, Claudius, and Trajan, the empire reached its greatest extent, from the deserts of Arabia to the wild forests of Germania, from the coasts of Africa to the mist-covered isles of Britannia. Roman engineers built roads that stitched the world together, and their legions enforced peace through steel. Yet the further the borders stretched, the harder it became to hold them. Every mile of conquest carried the weight of rebellion, and every victory birthed new enemies. Then came Nero, a man born of privilege and poisoned by power. Rome burned under his rule, some said by accident, others whispered by design. As flames devoured the city, Nero played his lyre and blamed the Christians, beginning an age of persecution that would stain Rome's name for centuries. The Senate feared him, the people despised him, and when rebellion rose, Nero fled and took his own life. The empire, though mighty, began to crack not from without, but from within. The years that followed became a storm. Generals rose and fell like waves. Emperors were crowned in the morning and dead by nightfall. Civil wars tore through the empire like wildfire. The year of the 4 emperors left Rome drenched in blood and betrayal. The legions no longer fought for Rome, they fought for whoever promised them gold and glory. The empire had become a prize to be won, not a duty to protect. At last, out of the ashes, came Vespasian, a soldier, not a noble. He restored order, rebuilt Rome, and gave the empire new purpose. He began construction of the Colosseum, a monument of stone and spectacle, where the people could forget their pain in the roar of crowds and the screams of gladiators. Bread and games, that was his gift to the masses. The empire was stable again, but at the cost of its soul. Under Trajan, Rome reached the height of its power. The empire stretched farther than ever before, and the people called him Optimus Princeps, the best ruler. He built monuments, roads, and forums that dazzled the world. Yet his conquests brought not only wealth, but exhaustion. Even Rome's might had limits. The vastness of the empire strained its armies and its treasury. The seeds of decline were already sown, unseen but inevitable. By the time of Hadrian, Rome had stopped expanding. The emperor built walls, not roads, defenses like Hadrian's wall in Britain, as if to hold back the darkness gathering beyond. Within, the capital glittered with luxury. Senators feasted on silver platters, poets praised the emperors in gold-lined halls. But the common people, the backbone of Rome, grew restless, hungry, and forgotten. Decadence had become Rome's new religion. For a brief moment, light returned. Antoninus Pius and Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, ruled with wisdom and restraint. Marcus wrote of virtue and balance, even as barbarians stormed the frontiers and plague swept through the empire. He believed that duty and honor could hold Rome together, but even a philosopher could not stop the tide of fate. When he died, his son Commodus inherited the throne and began the empire's slow descent into madness once more. Commodus saw himself as a god, a new Hercules. He fought as a gladiator, bathed in blood, and renamed months after himself. The empire became a theater of insanity. Senators were executed on whims, generals betrayed one another, and the people starved while their emperor played. When he was finally assassinated in 192 CE, the Roman world fell into chaos again. The Golden Age was gone, and the twilight had begun. By the 3rd century, Rome was an empire of splendor and rot. The frontiers burned with invasion, Goths, Persians, Vandals, and Franks tested its strength. Within, emperors rose and fell faster than seasons. The army ruled through fear, the Senate through shadows. And yet, even then, the eagle still flew, proud and defiant, as if Rome could never die. But history had already chosen its path, the storm was coming, and even the eternal city could not withstand it forever. Rome entered its darkest age. Between 235 and 284 CE, more than 20 emperors rose and fell, murdered by their own soldiers or rivals. The empire split, rejoined, and split again. Plague, famine, and invasion tore its heart apart. The once mighty legions, loyal only to gold, became mercenaries for hire. Provinces declared independence, and the dream of one Rome began to crumble. Then came Diocletian, a man of iron will. He divided the empire into east and west, hoping to make it governable again. He reorganized the army, reformed taxes, and declared himself a living god worshipped in temples alongside Jupiter. His rule brought stability, but at the cost of freedom. The old republic's ghost had long vanished. In its place stood an empire ruled by fear, bureaucracy, and divine authority. After Diocletian abdicated, Rome plunged into war once more. Out of the blood rose Constantine the Great, the first Christian emperor. He saw a vision of the cross in the sky, with the words in this sign, "Conquer." He united the empire and founded a new capital, Constantinople, on the Bosporus, a city meant to be the new Rome, shining and eternal. Christianity became the empire's faith, transforming its spirit forever. But unity was an illusion. The Eastern Roman Empire grew rich and stable, while the Western Empire decayed. The Senate lost power, the economy collapsed, and the legions could no longer defend the vast frontiers. The barbarians, once kept at bay, now surged into Roman lands. Goths, Vandals, Huns, they came not as visitors, but conquerors. In 410 CE, unthinkable horror struck. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, breached the walls of Rome. For 3 days, the eternal city burned. Temples were looted, palaces ransacked, and the empire's heart was laid bare. The world watched in disbelief. Rome, once the conqueror of nations, had become the conquered. It was a wound that would never truly heal. After the sack, Rome limped on, a shadow of its former self. Puppet emperors ruled under barbarian influence. Gold was gone, armies were thin, and trade routes lay silent. In 476 CE, the final blow came. The Germanic general Odoacer deposed the boy emperor Romulus Augustulus, sending the imperial insignia to Constantinople. The Western Roman Empire was dead. But the story did not end there. The Eastern Empire, ruled from Constantinople, lived on for another 1,000 years as the Byzantine Empire. It carried the Roman name, the Roman law, and the Roman pride, but the old spirit was gone. What had once been a republic of citizens had become a world of emperors, priests, and forgotten ideals. Though the empire fell, its shadow never left humanity. Roman roads became the paths of Europe. Roman law shaped kingdoms. Roman architecture, literature, and language became the foundation of Western civilization. Even in ruin, Rome remained immortal, carved into the bones of history. For centuries, kings and conquerors would dream of Rome's return, Charlemagne, Napoleon, Mussolini, each claiming to restore what had been lost. But Rome was not just a city or an empire, it was an idea of order, power, and destiny. And ideas, unlike empires, never truly die. Today, the ruins of the Colosseum still stand beneath the Italian sun. The stones whisper of glory and blood, triumph and tragedy. The empire that once ruled the world lies silent, yet its echo endures in our laws, our languages, our dreams of greatness. For Rome was not built in a day, nor did it die in one. It lives still, in every empire that rises and falls, in every man who reaches for immortality.